Good evening, everyone. I'm Anna Kopyto, Chair of Association of Polish Engineers in Great Britain. Welcome to the second panel discussion on the first day of Congress of Polish Engineers in the UK. The Congress has been organized to celebrate the 80th anniversary of Association of Polish Engineers in Great Britain. We are proud to be one of the oldest Polish organizations in the UK. For over 80 years, the association has been providing a forum for discussion and exchange of ideas and information on latest technological advancements, mentoring and support their members in professional development. This would not be possible without a great number of science enthusiasts and volunteers giving their time for the benefit of our community. We also rely on the support of our sponsors who helped us in funding this Congress: Embassy of the Republic of Poland in London, Fundacja Grabowskiego, Stowarzyszenie Polskich Kombatantów, and Polonia Aid Foundation Trust. In the last few weeks, we have received many congratulation letters from various scientific and technical associations, Naczelna Organizacja Techniczna, Federacja Stowarzyszeń Naukowo-Technicznych, Polish University Abroad, European Federation of Polish Scientific and Technological Societies Abroad, Polski Związek Inżynierów i Techników Budownictwa, Polonia Technica, Association of Polish American Engineers, to name a few. Thank you for acknowledging our jubilee. I also would like to welcome our special guests who joined us from places across the globe. I hope that at the end of the session, we will be able to hear a few words from them. I think we've got here the representatives from New York, Professor Janusz Romański, Honorary President of Polonia Technica. We have Dr. Andrzej Furmaniak from Boston, our honorary member of Stowarzyszenie Techników Polskich Wielkiej Brytanii. We have Berlin, Katarzyna Józak-Oraczewska. We have Warsaw, Zygmunt Mayer and Andrzej Pawlowski. We have Marcin Kowalski from Dubai. We also have Volodymyr Sakharov from University of Zielona Góra. Ewelina Wachnicka from Paris, and I think we also have Janusz Ptak from Paris, representing European Federation of Polish Scientific and Technological Societies Abroad. And let me just quickly scroll through the list. Yes, I think that's all. A little bit on housekeeping. We can interact in two ways. Please send messages via chat or via the Q&A. We aim to answer the questions during the discussion, but also we hope to do that at the end of after the panel discussion ends. So without further delays, please welcome Tomasz Dyl, founder of Gotta-Be, who will be the moderator of the discussion, Engineering Over Borders. Tomasz, over to you.
Hi and good evening. Thank you so much for their introduction, and it's a pleasure for me to be able to join you today and be able to host the discussion. We have a fantastic panel of professionals who are going to sharing how they've crossed the borders and how they've managed to overcome a number of challenges. And when we're talking about borders, we don't necessarily mean borders of countries, but also borders in the form of a challenge. We've had a great discussions with all of the panelists before today's event, and I'm going to go very deep to learn more about them and how they sort of got to where they are today. And as we've heard previously, there is an opportunity for you to be part of today's discussion too. Please either use the chat function or the Q&A to find out more about and learn more about and ask questions to our panelists. So earlier this morning, we've had a previous panel, and let me just tell you more about it, and you'll be able to watch it online as well. From what I understand, it's going to be available on the Stowarzyszenie Techników Polskich Wielkiej Brytanii on YouTube. So be able to find out more how making sense of it all and how to gain insight from data has worked this morning. But here today, we're going to talk about the engineering over borders, and I'm delighted to be joined by Agnieszka Szymczyk from Buro Happold. We've also got Rafael Delmienter from London Installations, and Teresa Bolsek, a second generation Pole from Pollard Thomson Edwards, and of course, not last but not least, Marcin Zielinski from Loop Engineering. Before we start the conversation and get into the depth of it, I will allow each one of the participants to briefly introduce themselves and tell them more about the work they've done. And we will start with Agnieszka.
Hello, everyone. My name is Agnieszka Szymczyk. My current role is I work in Buro Happold as associate MEP engineer. Mainly at the moment working as a project leader and project engineer on various projects. During my 15 years of my career, I traveled the world. I work in Europe and Middle East. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about the life in Dubai, in Middle East. If you can scroll up to the next page, I put together a couple of photos. So to give you a little bit an overview of how the life in Dubai was. So on the left side, in the left corner, this photo was taken by me standing on the top of the roof of the building I was working on. So you can see the nice fog, which was so typical for Middle East, and pretty much everything was Dubai and Abu Dhabi was below that fog. On the second photo, you can, this is again photo taken by me driving to work. So you can see the extreme climates, sandstorms and sand everywhere, which again, bring the differences in design and different challenges to the projects we would normally do in Europe. On the right corner, this is a tower I was working on. It's 300 meters, over 300 meters tower with over 25 megawatts cooling load. So obviously you can imagine the different scale of the design I was involved in. So on the left corner, these are the size of the chillers. We had to manage to make them work. Each of the chiller was like 6 megawatts. So again, and so another difference to the European lifestyle was obviously the different in the culture and the women's rights and women on site, and the difference in a religion and an aspect as like different clothes, wearing the clothes and different lifestyle. But overall, I wanted to say that the life over there was great experience. Won an award, met my husband, so all good overall. I think I will hand it over to the next panelist.
Thank you so much, Agnieszka, for the introduction. And now we will move on to the next panelist, Marcin Zielinski.
Good evening, everyone. I want to say that I'm really happy to take part in this discussion. A few words about myself. So I'm a director and co-owner of Loop Engineering Limited, a business in the UK, and also Loop Engineering Polska, spółka z ograniczoną odpowiedzialnością. Both businesses set up in 2011, so they are more than 10 years old. We have offices in London and Warsaw, employing about 20 engineers full-time, and another handful of contract people depending on the workload. We have projects throughout Europe and Middle East, however, mainly in London, in Warsaw, because this is where the market is the strongest for us. I moved to London in 2003 to study MSc in building services at London South Bank University after graduating at Technical University of Gdańsk in year 2000. And due to the business nature, I regularly cross the borders physically, digitally, and I would say also mentally, because very often I think what's happening over there and what's happening here. So I travel to Poland every 2 weeks just to see how the business is doing over there, and also to supervise our projects. Next slide, please. So over the years in the UK, I was lucky to work on interesting and challenging projects. So for example, Wimbledon Centre Court, the O2 Arena in Greenwich, and Lansdowne Road Stadium in Ireland. This was when I worked with a company called EMI Engineers. And then I work on Dira waterfront in Dubai, where I used to travel a lot. And also it was quite interesting project because my delivery team was actually in Delhi. So I traveled to Dubai for site meetings and then to Delhi to inform my team. And then I was coming back to London. And another project, Crossrail, Bond Street Station, London Bridge Station. And this was when I worked for WSP. And under Loop Engineering, which is my company, I think the most prestigious project is the Royal Albert Hall. And it's a great building, and we are lucky to be the resident engineers since 2014. So other engagements is I used to be involved at Association of Polish Engineers for over 10 years. I think for 6 years I was vice chairman. So it's a little bit in the past, but I still love being and helping wherever I can. I'm also a fellow member of CIPSE, which is Chartered Institution of Building Services Engineers, and a board member of CIPSE HVAC group. So it's a group which focuses on heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. So basically that's all from me, and looking forward to the discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Martin. And over to our next panelist, and that's Rafael Delmienter.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'll try to be super quick. So I'm a director and founder of Bolsek Construction, which started as a small construction company. We now have aspirations to work on large GLA projects, retrofit, accelerate, and doing over 200 homes refurbs for local councils within the Great London area. We recently found air offices, which are carbon zero offices, energy independent, being built over the existing car parks. All my work moves around low energy buildings and how we not use any energy in buildings or convert existing buildings to that standards. And I also provide expertise and help other builders or architects to build to those standards. And next slide. So for the past, we've been working for the private clients a lot and with architects on the very large projects. And now we're more working with Osborne Construction as our key partner, Energy Sprong, Sutton Council. Yes, and why do I do what I do? I think I want to say I'm a true believer in fighting global warming. And I know it's a super tough job to do, but I hope that by doing things right and showing that can be done for the right budget, people will start following it in the industry.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, we will now hear from Teresa Bolsek, the Senior Advisor at Pollard Thomas Edwards Architects.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry, my video's just not turning on. Yeah. I think I've probably crossed a border already because I'm actually not an engineer, I'm an architect. And also, unlike my other panel members, I was actually born in England. So next slide. That's not my slide. Next slide. However, so my parents came to England just after the Second World War. And I had quite a Polish upbringing, as you can see from these photographs. So next slide. So what were my parents doing here? Well, they both came from Eastern Poland. They were children at the time, but they spent the first 2 years of the war in hard labor camps in Siberia. Next slide. And then following that, when the Poles were set free, my father, bottom left picture, joined Andres' army, and my mother, who was orphaned in Siberia, was, like so many other Poles who weren't able to join the forces, deposited in various British colonies in and around India and Africa. So my mother and my father's parents actually spent the next 7 years in Tanganyika, what's now Tanzania, in these Polish camps. And then when they first arrived to England, my father arrived in 1946 and my mother arrived in 1948, but they both started life in England in these resettlement camps, which you can see images on the right. They were former RAF stations and they were known to the Poles as Beczki Śmiechu. Next slide. I thought it was important to cover those slides just to give you an idea of where and how I started. But I wanted to be an architect from about the age of 8. And I persisted with that, determined, albeit there were lots of obstacles in the way. I studied both at the Bartlett at University College London and also in Kansas in the USA. Next slide. To cut a very long story short, the bulk of my career since the mid-80s has been at Pollard Thomas Edwards, where I was ultimately senior partner. It's a practice, architectural practice of about 160 people now. We specialize in regeneration, mixed use, and essentially housing projects. And most of our, if not all of our projects are actually in England and actually in London and the Southeast. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of my colleagues and panelists for introductions. We're now going to get into the depth of the discussion and learn more about the work that we do. So if I could ensure that all of my panelists have got their cameras on, that'd be fantastic. And how it's going to work is I'm going to go through different set of questions each time and alter between the different participants so that we can get to know them better. So Teresa, I'll go to you first if I could. So You've mentioned you've worked for Pollard Edwards Thomas for quite some time. So how was it and how did you find the first experience of being a female architect? Because that's quite an important and a very different market to what it used to be. So how's that has changed?
Well, I started my career, I suppose, in the mid-70s. And it was a very, life in England and generally was a very different place then than it is now. I mean, I remember, you know, my first visits or onto site or in site huts. Site huts were still able to have images and calendars of women with little or no clothing. And even, you know, architectural magazines had advertised lintels with women who were scantily clad. I mean, it was, you know, when I look back, it was unbelievable. And also the statistics, you know, the number of women entering architecture was very low. So it really was a man's world. I mean, statistics have changed enormously since I started university. I think now, there are more female entering the profession than there are males. I think it's 51 to 49%. Having said that, in England, I think the statistics that at the end of 2019, there were the qualified architects at 28% female and 72% male. So you can see there's still quite a divide. I think things are changing. I actually think, I mean, there are things like, I think COVID actually is going to have some impact. I think we've perhaps become more accustomed or more acceptable of flexible working, home working. That whole business model of just having a very linear career path, which a lot of women couldn't embark on, I think is changing. So I'm very hopeful, yes. And
fantastic.
I think the key thing though is you've got to maintain the balance to senior roles, because actually it's when you have a better balance in senior roles that will encourage more junior roles and a better balance across the whole profession.
Thank you so much for that. Agnieszka, similar question to you. I mean, you've crossed not just one border, but several borders. I mean, I know you've moved initially from Poland to Germany, and then from Germany, you go sort of deployed into UAE. Obviously, a completely different scenario when it comes to the working life, but ultimately also a role of a female in terms of constructions and being involved in that sort of field. So how was it to work in UAE? How did you find it? Are there any major challenges that you faced whilst over there?
Yeah, so, I mean, I would start with Dubai, and working in the Middle East, as I said, was hot, humid, and challenging. As you said, there were different challenges. I mean, starting from like technical challenges where you work on a completely different scale projects, but challenges also that women on site and sites over there are not designed for a female on site. I mean, a simple example would be that we didn't even have, I mean, I didn't even have a female toilet, you know, dedicated, because I was the only female woman on site. So they had to accommodate me with a separate toilet, you know, which again, that you would not have issue like that in Europe or in any other part here. Whereas there, it was something which I had to face, and obviously something so simple and natural here was quite challenging over there. But I mean, what I just had to stay focused and try not to get distracted with any of this. Wanted to finish my job, wanted to learn a lot, get the experience, and basically finish my building. And this is, it was always in my head. These were the main reasons why I wanted to go there. And yeah, just stayed focused and don't get distracted with anything like that.
Oh, thank you. Raphael, you're going to be my next victim of questions. Similar to others, you've traveled a little bit of the world. I know Australia was on cards, and then you sort of decided that UK is going to be the next area. How do you drive the comparison? Obviously, two English-speaking countries, ultimately same queen, but very different markets, and a huge difference in terms of, from the building site through to even how they're sort of managed. So what dragged you all the way down to the other end of the world to start with? And also, what comparisons can you see between the two countries?
There is a bit of a history on the dragging me there, which had nothing to do with buildings. It was a different passion. So passion for sustainability, passion for building cars, solar cars. Australian run solar race in the 90s. And in my little head as a schoolboy was that I'll be building solar cars, and everything we powered by solar. And at the time there was no Tesla, so I went there, studied the mechanical engineering, and Tesla was not around. Otherwise, they'll just pack up and mop their floors to get in. And I had to relocate the passion somewhere else. So the passion went into solar panels on the buildings, and then heat pumps, and then buildings themselves, and then the whole envelope concept. What's the difference between Australia? Yes, different climate, definitely different approach. Like over there, when we were talking about buildings, single glazed, no insulation, nobody was thinking about being eco. And I see, talking to my friends from Australia now, they're all turning the same way. They have a problem with too much use of energy for cooling and overheating of the buildings. Maybe we will have the same thing here in the UK very soon, with the climate changing as it does now. The last 4 or 5 years, every year we have one extra day of extra hot weather, and more people are struggling or even dying from heat exhaustion. So in terms of personal boundaries, I love working with Australians. They're all very positive. And I have to say, when being there, it was a lot more fun after work.
Absolutely, completely different line.
Staying in Australia, I used to live in Sydney, and having beach 5 minutes away from my house was part of it. UK is closer to Poland, it's closer to my family, so the decision to come back and stay here was because I completed a degree in Australia. Australia was part of the Commonwealth, so I believe that it would be easier to find a job here, closer to family. At the end, being homesick was more important.
See, it always comes down to that one thing, and that is the homesickness. We all had this. And my next participant has discovered this very well, because as he's mentioned, he travels between UK and Poland quite frequently, every 2 weeks, if I recall it. Martin, you studied both in Poland and the UK. I mean, how do you compare the level of education in the two markets? And what prompted you to wanting to study? I mean, you've got a qualification, you've already had a degree from Poland. What made you wanting to go and continue the learning and educating yourself in the UK?
It's been quite long since I graduated. 16, 17 years ago it happened. So let me quickly think about it. But I think there are two questions. Okay, so first one is what the differences are, and the second one is what made me to come to UK. So in terms of the first one, I think yes, there were differences. I've done MSc, Master of Science at Technical University of Gdańsk, which is Studia Magisterskie, it's called in Polish, and MSc in London South Bank University. So the main differences were that, let's say, over the last 2 years at Technical University in Gdańsk, I had something like 20 or maybe 30 subjects. I had geology, geotechnique, I had environmental engineering, I have math, physics, I had hydraulics, loads, I don't know, 20, 30 subjects. In the UK, we had, over the 2 years, we had 6 subjects. And we were, over the 2 years, we were talking about the same things over and over again. So you can imagine that after the university in Gdańsk, I was not really knew what I wanted to do. My mind was open for different things. Whilst after London South Bank University, there was only one way, because we've been, over the last 2 years, I was doing the same formulas, the same engineering, mechanical engineering. There was only one way to go. So it was much more narrow, much more focused and specialized. Mm-hmm. So that's the main 2 differences. And I don't know what's better, but after Technical University in Gdańsk, probably people still have to choose what really they want to do. It gives them more opportunities, but on the other hand, they are not yet ready to do one specific thing. And after London South Bank University, there was no options for me. I had to go and do mechanical engineering, building services, but I was ready. I knew almost everything. I had also a practical experience during the university. So as you can see, completely 2 different ways of studying. Mm-hmm.
So Teresa, earlier,
so that's the first question.
Yeah, go with the second part of the question, please.
Yeah, the second is much quicker, because actually I was granted a scholarship from a company called Bechtel, and they just sponsored me to come to London and study whatever I wanted to study. And the main reason was that Bechtel, back then, it was year 2000, they won A1 motorway construction and management. And they were looking for good English-speaking qualified engineers. So they kind of trained me. But later on, they decided to sell the project to Skanska, and actually Skanska built A1, and Bechtel told me, okay, you own us nothing, do whatever you want. So that's why I stayed in the UK.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Teresa, earlier I've mentioned about missing home and going back to it. I mean, you've had a slightly different experience being a second generation Pole. When we spoke before this panel, you told me a very moving sentence, and I sort of will quote it. I wanted to hide I was Polish. I mean, we shouldn't be feeling that we need to hide the fact that we're Polish, but obviously back when we're sort of talking about this is a completely different era, completely different time. So at what point did you cross the border to say, do you know what, it doesn't matter that I have a different background, I am who I am, and I'm going to be who I want to be. So tell me more, please.
Yeah, so no, it's true. And, you know, I look back and I think it's unbelievable, but this is when I was at school, and I was educated in the very early 60s and 70s. And again, England was a very different place. And, you know, as a child, a 5- and 6-year-old, I didn't really want to be different. So I didn't really tell anyone that I could speak another language. I was, you know, I mean, anecdotally, I remember coming into school one day and somebody said, "What did you have for tea last night?" And I thought, oh, how am I going to say placki and kwaszna śmietana? So I said, beans on toast. Yes, because I just didn't want to be different. And you know, and I was sort of slightly mortified that my family didn't speak English properly. But it was about when I was 14, I think, and I must have had like a eureka moment. And I thought, what am I doing? Why am I hiding this? This is really rich. you know, I can embrace this, and I can be Polish when I want to be, and I can be English when I want to be. And in fact, it was from that time on that's exactly what I did. And I remember my school friends sort of looking at me rather enviously, saying, well, it's all right for you, you've got an excuse. And I'm not sure excuse is the right word, but what I can see what they meant was, you know, you can do whatever you want almost. And indeed, I think I've been embracing it ever since then. So there we go. But you can imagine, you know, England, early 60s, well, actually also, you know, you can imagine just after the war, you know, everybody was struggling. And so, you know, a lot of people didn't really understand what all these Poles were doing over here, you know, so it was a very different place.
I mean, fast forward 40 years later, and the same question came along. I mean, what are these Poles doing here after 2004, and why do we get so many of them coming?
Yeah, but you've got to tell me what you experienced. But you know, it's just such a more international world or place, or
absolutely
London is. So you have to tell me what your experience is.
I'm sure there is plenty to be said, but we will maybe get to the bottom of it later down the conversation. But I also was talking to you, I also wanted to ask, because you've embraced something else, and you won an award for being a Woman of the Year. I mean, we're talking Architect Journal.
That's a bit expensive, yeah. No, it's it was the Architects Journal and the Architectural Review, and they have this thing, and I was the AJ Woman Architect of the Year, really, and that was now quite a while ago, in 2015. I think it's really difficult in architecture to be singled out. I mean, architecture, as I'm sure engineering is a very collaborative profession. You work with a lot of people. And so I always think that that award was won on behalf of all the teams and all the people and the practice that I work with. But it certainly was a great honor.
Mm. Agnieszka, you can sort of share a similar story, because I know back in the UAE you won an award as well. But before we touch base on the award, I mean, I have to ask this question. I mean, how did you come at the challenge of being compared to a man, especially in a country where, you know, you are very singled out, as you've mentioned, there's no toilets for you, there's no facilities, etc. And you are constantly working, you know, as a much senior person than anybody else on site, and you've got blokes reporting to you. How did you overcome this whole challenge of being compared to men? And then if we could touch base on the award as well.
So as a first reaction was, right, I'm gonna buy a pink hat just to demonstrate that I am a female on that side. In the end, I didn't. Maybe because I couldn't find it anywhere. But also, I mean, it was difficult initially. Nobody, as you said, wanted to talk to me, even though, you know, it was up to me to sign up the contractor work, and the contractor would come to the room and talk to the male, you know, person next to me, and discussing my problems. So they would not look at me, they would not look at, you know, to my eyes. They probably were more overwhelmed with the fact that they had to talk to the female engineer. But as I said, well, you had to be strong. You had to show that you're not afraid of that, and they're not going to talk to me, well, then I'm not going to sign off their drawings. So they have to come to me. They realized that after maybe 3-4 months that they have no other options, but they have to come to me. And then
Sure.
We started a conversation. And actually after that, it was very nice. And we made lots of good jokes and friends. And in the end, you know, had a very good relationship with the client as well, who initially was very reluctant to employ me. The reason I went for that senior role was because my colleague got ill, so they had to replace him with another senior engineer. The client didn't expect that he's going to get a female one. So we didn't even realize initially that he cut my fee in half, because he thought, and he paid basically my company like half less than he was paying for a male engineer. We realized that, a few months later. But then in the same time, as I said, we got really good relationship in the end, and I invited him to the awards, on which I won the award, and it was just such a good, high note, and saying that, it was worth to pay the full bill, I suppose, in the end. And again, as I said, I just knew that I just need to stay focused and just don't take it personally, and know that it's a different culture, and just carry on with what I was doing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Raphael, on your LinkedIn, you're saying innovator who would like to make a change to older homes and make them more sustainable. I mean, you've got a bit of a challenge, given the fact that you're in the UK. The houses are not the most eco-friendly and eco-conscious. So how do you overcome a challenge of working in the UK? And, are you just focusing solely on the new builds and this is what you're looking to do? Or would you take on a challenge and take on a sort of a 15, 20-year-old home and try to make it more sustainable, more eco-friendly as well? Any tips?
Yeah, so the first thing is I'm in UK because we have the most amount of old buildings, and anywhere else in Europe, the challenge is not big enough. No, I'm not focusing on new builds. We have clients, private individuals who ask us to build self-sustaining homes. So we did a few of those where there's a switch on the wall. You can come in and say, I want to be off-grid, and you just switch it off and the house works. And the gentleman bought a car, and the solar panels charge the batteries charge the car, he drives the car, and he pays no bills. And if he switches back to the grid, then he makes £500 a year profit from selling energy that he doesn't use. But those projects are quite high rate per square meter. And that is a problem, the problem that faces entire UK. So if we need to really tackle the massive climate change, and then all those little local councils saying we have now policies mentioning climate emergency.
Sure.
So the question is, okay, you have that policy, what are you going to do? Because you got mass amount of housing stock that needs upgrading. So I'm working at the moment in essentially downloading all the 10-year experience into a set of solutions that can be applied on a normal terrace home or semi-detached building using offset manufacturing, producing porches. That's our new clever idea. Is that we call it porch pots. So the porch house all the equipment that is required for those low energy buildings. So you don't take any space, and there are manufacturers offsite. They arrive, installed in one day. So the challenge is big, but what is really cool right now is that for the last 9 years, I was a bit the crazy guy who tries to build zero energy buildings where you don't make money if you do it. That's the thing. You do it for passion and
Sure.
not for money. And now it sort of turns slightly because we got on the platform as a small building company together with people like Vinci, Engie, big players, millions, hundreds of millions of pounds turnover, and we supposed to be delivering 200 units. So unit is a house or flat or semi-detached buildings, a unit. 200 of those in the first year, 400 next year.
Okay.
And more. And the idea behind it is that everything we do has to be scalable. So nobody else comes in with a solution which says, right, we're going to just throw hundreds of people to do the work. No, it's one good factory, second factory, and we're going to produce those panels and we make them very clever and it all will work. Now, I'm really sorry. You touch on the really passionate element of my work.
No, that's fine. Whilst I've also got you, I mean, obviously COP26 happening next week, plenty of expected to be announced. I mean, do you think what's going to come out from that sort of conversation in terms of what we've already seen and here is going to change not just the UK, but also ultimately the other markets in terms of how we're going to try and live more sustainably, more eco-friendly, and we're going to look after the only earth that we've got?
I really hope so, because you see, it doesn't matter how many passionate people you have to change the face of construction industry. At the moment, my biggest problems are lawyers and insurance companies. Those are the people who hold me back. I have to go on the 500,000 pounds project for a local council. I had to go through 860 pages, which 200 pages is NEC 4 contract, normally used for building bridges and very large developments, and 400 pages of documents. It's crazy. It's basically the last 20 years, I reckon, the market was full of crazy refurbs, people saying that they can do things and doing it wrongly. So there are lots of claims coming back, and insurance companies just ring fence everything now. So that's my problem. We need a legislative changes. There's a lot of architects. I think Teresa knows she got a very good guy, Tom, working in her company, and he's part of Letty. They're producing amazing documents to help people to create perfect designs.
Yeah,
and we're working with those people, and everything is down to now skills. There's no skills on the market, and training and offsite. Really, offsite will be the future. If we have to really change the face of industry, you have to essentially go online and order online through the website the refurb for your house. If you can do it, and we're aiming to do exactly that, any council can go on the website and choose to tick the box, and there is a solution coming. That's where you could see that the market moving with it and change. Other things, you know, I have to focus. So I don't use plastic bags, and I drive electric car, and I try to do my best. But everything else that they're going to discuss on those summits, I let other people to specialize in and change the world.
Okay. Martin, coming back to you, I mean, you've mentioned at the beginning that you've worked on some impressive projects. I mean, Crossrail, I mean, that's a bit of a sensitive topic for anybody living in the UK because it's running a little bit over budget. So I think you've charged them a little bit too much. But I mean, come on, we've seen Agnieszka, we've seen a number of other people being at Wimbledon, but never from the perspective of actually an engineer working on what is the most important roof. I mean, you've also have done O2 and a number of other projects. I mean, tell me which one of those stood out to you? Which one did you think is the most impressive, or you've had the biggest privilege on working on? Is there one? I mean, maybe I've asked the wrong question. Is there one that you can name?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I was kind of fortunate working on quite interesting projects. I think probably it's because I was lucky, maybe also some coincidence. You know how they say, the harder I work, the more lucky I am. Yes. So, yeah, I think the Wimbledon Central Court, the retractable roof was it was an amazing project because during the design we had to work with biologists to work out what's going to happen with the grass when the roof is closed. So for example, what's going to happen when it's closed for 12 hours, which is never going to happen, but what's going to happen with the grass, and if the players can play because of the humidity and condensation coming from the ground, the grass will become very slippery. The other question was, what's going to happen if we have 200 millimeters of snow on the roof, which we know that the roof is never closed because the Wimbledon Central Court is only in use in June, and there is never snow when the roof is closed. But we had to do the calculation, what's going to happen inside the bowl with these conditions. So yeah, I think this project stood out, and yeah, the other ones were very interesting as well, like the O2, for example. So we designed a ventilation system. I was back then a senior mechanical engineer. This was year 2005, 2007. So, you know, it was designing cooling and ventilation, heating for 26,000 people. Mm-hmm. It was just brilliant, brilliant. What I liked in England and working from this company is that we actually did all these investigations. Yes. So, for example, how the air will move inside the bowl. Yes. We've done CFD analysis. Yes. We spent months on selecting nozzles, which will be supplying air into the bowl. I think UK is very unique from this perspective, that they really love sitting around the table and chatting about these little problems, which actually makes the outcome very, very, yeah, interesting.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Teresa, I'm coming back to you. I mean, we discussed a little bit about the equality and equal opportunities and everything else, but I really want to know how the world of women in work has changed since you started your career. Is there anything that you think is likely to happen? Are we on a course for a change? I mean, you've mentioned that pandemic potentially could make an impact on it, but tell me more.
Well, I do think it's changing. I mean, I don't think it's changing fast enough, but certainly in my career, it's changed quite a lot. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, there are just things now, we're very much more aware of things that we can or should or shouldn't even say. And, you know, that whole thing of discriminating against anyone is actually, you know, quite a serious issue, which I think when I started my career wasn't even considered in that way. And I think there's the whole thing about, there's now in England something called paternal leave. So I think people sharing and it being expected that people share childcare. Yeah. So I think the world, and you know, and it's things like that. It's all slow, but it is moving. I mean, I have to believe and have to be encouraged that it is moving, and I can see it just by, you know, the number of women and there are in the profession actually. Mm-hmm. And actually, it's not only, you know, that sort of discrimination in terms of men and women. I mean, when you know, historically, especially in England, architecture used to be quite the profession of the wealthy. Yeah. And you know, we had a wonderful education system where you actually, when I was being educated, you had your education paid for. And now that's changed. So it worries me that that's going to do something else to the people who can qualify to be architects. And I think, you know, there's a lot of work being done on trying to adjust that, having schemes which help those who can't necessarily afford to pay for their education. So, you know, I think slowly we are moving in the right direction.
Fantastic, thank you. And fingers crossed that it will get better and better. I mean, we still got plenty of time, so if you've got any questions that you'd like to do, please do send them in the Q&A. I can see some questions already being answered, so thank you to the panelists for answering those in between. We will be taking some more in a second. I'll go to Agnieszka. I mean, I wanted to find out, how did the Middle Eastern sort of bloc has impacted and helped you with your career? So how did work in the Middle East enhanced, improved gave you another opportunity to help with your career?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think it made me definitely stronger and more resilient to problems and solving the problems. And maybe before that, I would be more scared of putting yourself forward and challenge. I mean, the meetings I had to attend was mainly very senior males sitting around the table, and I obviously had to prove that I know what I'm talking about because I was a young female in the room, very often mistakenly taken for somebody who brings, you know, tea and biscuits to the room. And from that perspective, I think I got a lot more stronger, and I love now, you know, challenge. I'm not afraid of challenge. I made me more resilient to, as I said, facing different scenario and situation and looking at the problems from the above, really, and just make sure that, yeah, it is what it is. I'm not getting involved in any of this. And yeah, definitely Middle East. And from the technical point of view, was obviously also a great experience because I learned a lot, and especially the climate and all the, you know, humidity you've got there, and of the heat you've got there, and sand, you need to manage that completely different. And also the project, the tower I was based on, you know, you can compare it to probably the building which is Shard in London, you know, which is not very, it's quite rare to get the opportunity to work on it in here, whereas in Dubai there's just so many buildings like that, and you can just go and work and challenge all these challenges on a pretty much daily basis. So yeah, definitely great experience.
And whilst we're talking about this, we have a question in Q&A from Andrzej Foremniak, who's asking, Agnieszka, how difficult was it for you to adjust to specific climate conditions in a desert where you had to work? Dust storms, clogging filters, diesel engines. Is this something which I believe you were not very well, having been educated in Europe? Could we have a comment from you on that?
Yes, yeah, I mean, definitely great question. I mean, two answers. The first answer, I mean, when I landed in Middle East, it was the middle of summer, and I remember the date very vividly because it was 28th of June and it was very, very hot, and it was a sandstorm. So when I woke up in the morning, I was like, what have I just done? Where did I just landed? I want to go back home. Went to obviously the site. There were limits with like the very high temperature when you could possibly not be exposed to that heat, so you could not go to site and work there. So that 3 months of the year were very, very challenging, especially when you have to wear the proper PPE, you know, like very heavy trousers and long sleeve, and was really hot. But also from the design perspective, this was exactly the experience I was hoping to get, because thermodynamics there are just something which could work so well. I could then really understand very well how the humidity impacts the cooling load, and how is the difference in a cooling load when you've got such a high humidity like in the Middle East, and such a high temperature and sand, and you know, you need to design the special equipment, which you just need to, I guess, read and learn. I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, no, perfectly. Thank you so much. I mean, Rafael and Martin, a similar question to you guys, from the perspective that you both went from being employed to becoming employers. I mean, what prompts you to go from being, you know, on I don't want to say cushy numbers because that's not always the case, but how is it kind of the tables have turned from you from being on the sort of employed versus becoming the employer? So that's number one. And if I could just also throw in another question, what are some of the challenges that you're currently facing when it comes to the labor market, but also from the perspective of anything else? I mean, the B word I don't really want to mention, but we all know Brexit has had obviously a high and quite a large impact on a number of businesses in the UK. Martin, especially for you, you're obviously working in 2 markets, Poland and the UK. So yeah, let's start with Martin. I mean, first question, you know, what was it that prompted you to move from being employed to becoming an employer, or, you know, working for yourself to start with?
I think it was always inside me. I quite early realized that I'm a little cog in a massive machine, and nothing is going to depend on me, and nothing depends on my boss, and nothing depends on boss of my boss, and so on, so on. Working in a company which had, I think, 50,000 people back then. So yeah, so I always dreamt about it. And it was obviously a difficult decision, because you risk your solid and firm salary over to something that is very uncertain.
Yep.
But fortunately, we had a kind of overlap. So we work for a client during working for a big company, and it was quite smooth release. So basically, financially, there was not a major impact. So this is what made me, and as I'm saying, that was always, I always wanted to be on my own and be kind of the captain of my own boat. And I don't regret even for a second what happened. So yes, obviously, we're not working on such a beautiful and interesting projects as it used to be, but that's at least our motivation and our aspiration to bring our company to the stage where we actually will be able to undertake these projects, and Royal Albert Hall is one of them, and so we are moving in the right direction.
Thank you. Raphael, same question to you. I mean, how do you become from being, and I can see you're already smiling, you've probably got a great answer. So how's it becoming from being employed to, you know, from being employed to being an employee or employer?
Loads of money. No, it wasn't that. I have to say I was a difficult employee. Very difficult one. So I always challenge any decision, and I want to know exactly why that decision was made. And I was throwing my visions over somebody else's vision. So I had some problems being employed.
So you were sacked, yes? You were sacked. That's what you're saying.
No.
And you had no option.
I didn't get promotions. That's what I'm saying. All the promotions were doing like a bit sideways, you know. And then what's happened is, you know, I tried to really focus on sustainability. And wherever I went in terms of construction companies, they were not really interested. So I thought, okay, it's time to do it by myself. And that was the reason.
And guys, what challenge are you facing at the moment? I mean, you know, very often we say, you know, we're trying to cross the borders, and that by that we mean challenges. So what are the challenges that you're currently facing, being from the perspective of not just the employer, but also, you know, in the market that we are?
I'm trying to, you know, cross my own bedroom border, I would say, where, you know, when post-COVID lifestyle has changed, and you have to balance your life, work, family, house, and everything else in the same time. Whereas previously, I mean, it sounds a little bit easier because you just left the house, went to the office, and that's it. And now you leave the bedroom and go down, and you've got kids around, and you've got a husband working next to you, screaming on the phone, and then yeah, so I think to find the right balance in terms of the lifestyle and work and your aspiration and your family and your passions is probably the most difficult at the moment.
Okay.
And for me, I think it's about remaining positive, actually. I mean, you know, we're in a challenging world of building at the moment. There are so many competing agendas. I mean, we've got the safety agenda, you know, in the aftermath of Grenfell. We've got the climate agenda. As you mentioned, we've got skills shortages, we've got materials shortages. You know, it's tough and it can be really overwhelming, and yet there's a real housing need. And actually it's not being overwhelmed and not being negative about this and thinking, you know, there's obviously, we're going to work out a solution, we're going to work through this. Yeah.
Thank you. Rafael, Martin, anything to add from yourself?
Yes, we are waiting for Teresa to finish, to be polite.
Go on.
Yes, I used to have 70 people working for us on sites, various sites, and COVID, Brexit down to 50, down to 40. Really struggling to find now good workers, site managers. There seems to be that 30% or 40% people I know pack up and went back home, Poland, or chose a different country. So huge impact. I mean, we, in terms of crossing the borders ideas, I mean, we now having partners to help us with some of the work in Vietnam and Turkey. So we can offload some of the work because we really were so struggling to find the personnel here for UK. We advertise a lot, but then because of the COVID, you know, it's very difficult to have the interviews, or some other people now requesting that they work from home, they don't come to your office. We also in this really strange area of Buckinghamshire, where we have to compete with London for talent. And if we want to go back to London, then we're thinking, all right, our business growing, should we go back to London where everyone is escaping the London? And now all the talent is looking for cheaper housing in outskirts of London, or 2 hours train travel. They're moving there, and they know they can work remotely. And we're also trying to adjust to how we can make our office more efficient after COVID. And we already have 2 people from during our Friday meetings in the office. We have 1 person from Taiwan, 1 person from Poland, and a few people from London, and all the rest on the meeting like we have now, which is very bizarre if you compare it to what we used to do a year or 2 years ago.
Martin,
I will just say, Rafael, that we actually completed a building which was designed online. Yes, so actually I met the architects first time after 18 months. Yes, and it's actually it's completed. It's a pavilion in Brent Cross. It's a beautiful building, but the team had never met.
Wow.
Well, I met the architect. So that's after 18 months, and I was a little bit concerned to go on site and see actually if our coordination and the design works. We use Revit model, BIM modeling, so it helped a little bit, but you know, we spent hours and hours on Teams chatting, every second day a coordination meeting, and yeah, it's working. It's there. So the client is
the next step is to move the company in some nice Greece island and run the business from there.
That's you see this is interesting, because when I read the title of this discussion, which is Engineering Over Borders, this is the first thing which came to me. It's like you can design a building from London, and the building is in Caribbean, for example. Yes, or you can be in Warsaw and support a big company sitting in London. So this is what I thought my first impression was, and thanks to internet now and Teams connections, we can all do it. And this brings me to the question about challenges and borders as from employers' perspective. It's exactly the shortage of skills and engineers in London is a major problem, really, and it's not getting any better. Less and less young people choose engineering because they think it's very difficult. So we apart from working in Warsaw, we also have a team in Manila, mainly delivering CADing and 3D modeling, and which is, you know, it's very challenging because of culture. Maybe the language is, there's no language barrier because they can speak English, but there's a cultural barrier. So whatever we say, they will do. If we say that draw a toilet upside down, they will draw the toilet upside down. So we have this kind of problems, but this is mainly everything because of what's happening in the UK. There's no engineers.
Yeah.
I just add one more thing. We're having exactly the same thing, and rather than sending now a surveyor on site, we're sending somebody with a 3D scanner. We know that this guy sends this stuff to somewhere in Pakistan. They turn it into a model, and we have a model of the house with no engineer, no surveyor, and the 360-degree photographs. So what I'm doing now in terms of designing the solutions, we have goggles in our office, and I can walk like a street view through the house, pinpoint what needs to be changed. The guy's making notes, and then we essentially no longer are doing heavy lifting in terms of design. We just doing proposals. Yeah. And we're sending those proposals to people who are in all over the world, I have to say.
Do you think this will impact the quality of your product, of your design, and of your installation? Because it's not as it used to be, yes?
I think it will not in the long term, because the people who you partner with will pick up the level that you want. But what I think will happen, and that will be a bit tragic, is there will be fewer and fewer engineers who are much more superior, knowing everything, and can coordinate the design process. And there will be a lot of other guys who prepare the models. But I think that there will be young engineers joining in. There will be no longer a scope to grow and make mistakes. Because I have to say, I can state that I'm an expert because I screw up so many things.
Yeah.
And I think, I wish that young engineers have the same opportunity to screw things up.
This brings me on to a couple more questions, and almost coming to a conclusion that we started this conversation discussing that, you know, engineers over borders, but we realized actually these borders don't actually necessarily exist anymore, because we live in such a remote life now that these borders are only physical from the presence of actually crossing a border, of moving from one country to another. But before we sort of draw into conclusions, there are a few questions on the Q&A. So Martin, I'm going to you first. Have you ever checked Polish higher education schools, universities for their international ranks in terms of employability, research project achievements, to see where there are on the market of the higher education? As a question from Chris.
It sounds a little bit like a tricky question, I would say, because we know that in the top 10 there is whatever 6 UK, and the first Polish one. Last time I looked at it, probably a few years ago, it was whatever 300 or something. Yes. First of all, this chart was prepared probably by the UK people, and also that's what I know. It's mainly based on the budget. Okay, it's not on the quality of education. It's on the budget, and it's a common knowledge that university in Oxford will have much bigger budget than Technical University in Gdańsk. Yes, that's why we are where we are.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from a different Krzysztof this time around, but it's more of a generic question. Is there a Polish way of engineering opposite to British way? How our culture impact on the way we work? Any takers on this question?
I can tell you from my angle how this looks. I'm
Sure,
getting young engineers coming from Poland, excellent technical abilities, practical approach, and hands-on quite low. That's the skill that we're missing back in Poland. I personally studied in Australia, extremely hands-on. You basically designing something, they're asking you to design a connection detail. You go and weld that connection detail in the afternoon. So it was really hands-on. And here in UK at the moment, I think if I compare a British graduate with Polish graduate, I know that with the Polish one, I can do pretty much everything, and I can take him for 3D scanning, Revit coordination, and everything else. I am struggling with UK graduates at the moment. It's even if I have excellent. Recently, we employed young architects in our office. Graduates, I have to say, apart from knowing very good how to use Revit software, the practical skills, the material knowledge. I think in Poland, they have excellent material knowledge. The whole studies about materials. In UK, nothing.
Martin, anything else to add from yourself as an employer? I mean, do you choose Polish employees over British, or do you have a mixed team? How does that kind of work?
I fully agree with what Rafael is saying. Apart from one thing I would add on that, and also this comes to the education, because at the university in the UK, we actually were taught also subjects like marketing, finances, something that we didn't touch among these 30 subjects which I mentioned before at the University of Gdańsk. So yeah, I agree, the young people are maybe not technically ready as the Polish equivalent, but they have other skills. They are kind of, in terms of marketing, finances, commercially, a little bit more aware. So this is the difference I see, and also judging on we employ young people, and after UK universities, Brunel University, Portsmouth University, you name it, and I would say that this is a principle which exactly comes across to us. Yes, that they are commercially well orientated.
Just a couple.
I'd like to add, sorry, to that.
Of course, go for it,
I'm
Teresa.
not an engineer, but as an architect, I mean, at Pollard Thomas and Edwards, prior to Brexit, albeit we've still got quite a few nationalities, there were 25 languages spoken in the office. So we have, architects from all over. And I have to say, I agree, there are differences, but actually, if you bring all those differences together, what richness and wealth you get, and that's what we found as an office. Richness,
yes, very good one. Yeah.
Thank you, Martin. There's another question to you. Is the temporary market engineers need to be flexible to change their speciality? How is it possible in the UK if students have 6 subjects at the university who are studying the subjects very deeply?
Yeah, I think let me quickly, maybe I'll read the question again.
Yeah, it's in the chat, so I'll look at it.
So I understand it. Engineers need to be flexible to change their speciality. Yeah, how is it possible in the UK if students have 6 subjects? Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, and I tell you an example. So mechanical engineering, and most of the young people we employ, they are mechanical engineers. They graduated from mechanical engineering, and all of them wanted to work in Formula One. There's a dream of young people to work in Formula One, but because the sector, automotive sector, is quite limited, you have nobody is going to employ you in Formula One. Forget about it. It's only superstars, okay? But then option B is maybe Jaguar Land Rover will employ you if you're lucky. And if not, maybe Nissan in Sheffield. But if you're not, and you want to stay in London, for example, all these engineers have to change to building engineering, yes? But it's still mechanical engineering. The principles are still the same. I know that it doesn't answer the question, but I think in the current market, we have to be flexible, and we as Polish people probably have advantage over the UK graduates. We would adjust much quicker, I believe.
Brilliant. I mean, look, guys, there's so many more questions coming and we could continue this conversation much beyond today, but unfortunately, we are out of time. I'm sure we will still be hanging around for a few more minutes. So panelists, feel free to be able to answer the questions on the chat or by sort of typing your answer in the Q&A. From my point of view, it has been a great and fantastic discussion. We've learned a lot. And we've uncovered that even so that the borders do exist, we are managing as Poles to jump hoops and to be able to work remotely, be able to adjust to new ways of working, but also to, you know, judge sort of juggling the number of challenges that are being thrown our way from, as Teresa mentioned, from supplies through to a labor shortage. So a huge thank you to my panelists. Once again, Agnieszka, thank you, Martin, Teresa, and Raphael. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I will now be handing over back to Anna in London, and that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tomasz.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a great discussion. So we can all agree that borders can have many different meanings. They are complex phenomenon, transecting spaces in not only administrative and geopolitical sense, but also in cultural, economic, and social terms. And also, yeah, they do exist, but they fluctuate over time. I very much hope you enjoyed participating in the discussion as much as I have. Massive thanks to our moderator and our great panelists for sharing their experiences and knowledge with us. I'm conscious of time as well, but I just hope we could hear a few words from our guests who joined from Warsaw, Zielona Góra, Berlin, and Paris. So perhaps if I could get a few words from Dr. Habilitowany Volodymyr Sakharov from University of Zielona Góra. I'm very pleased to see such a beautiful poster you've prepared. Would you like to say anything?
Okay.
No doubt.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much to participate. It was a very interesting discussion, and I don't know. Thank you very much.
We're very pleased to see you tonight with us. I can also see Vice Chairman of Polish Chamber of Civil Engineers, Dr. Andrzej Pawłowski. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm very glad to participate in this discussion. So my experience with working abroad is very limited. Germany, a little bit England. But I remember the time when this border crossing, oh, sorry, I have to, oh, okay, I leave my telephone, was manually made. So the drawings were made in Poland, they were transported physically to Germany. When I have seen the theme of the meeting, I have the same thing as Marcin, yes, that will be talking about collaboration, about being in Poland and working for England, for Dubai, etc. Teresa Zielinski, who is sitting in your headquarters, has organized in Poland a conference with Dubai, and today's meeting is the best example of the possibility which we have now to work over the border. It was, of course, interesting to hear about a lot of successes of Polish engineers. It means that this theme is very universal. We can present the work of Polish engineer, but we can discuss too this problem, how to collaborate, because it maybe is necessary. We have different signals from Germany. Now I have heard from England that there is a lack of engineers, that maybe Polish engineers could support this work in abroad, even when staying in Poland. So thank you very much. I wish you a lot of successes in your work in England. Hoping to see you tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I can see that Professor Jan Romański joined us from New York. Professor?
Thank you very much for the invitation. Just I came. It was not very easy to join for me, the Zoom, but I had a chance to listen all this interesting conversation. And UK, I see, is a very specific in the area of accommodation, new engineers and good talents from Poland, which is very good. I'm very also impressed but the level of English which everyone presents over there is really very nice. So basically, if we're talking about New York and America, that is a little different approach because of the scale of the country. In the same time, you have to remember that it's not one nation type of the country. This is many people over the world, like you said, melted pot. And so basically also the approach in many cases is a little different. I don't want to tie too much, but later I will join more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. I would like to see if hear a few words from Magister Inżynier Katarzyna Józa-Goraczewska from Buro Happold in Berlin, who joined us as well.
It's not a Happold, but it's okay.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thank you very much, Teresa Zielinski, for invitation and congratulations on the anniversary of the Stowarzyszenie Techników Polskich. I was very happy to hear all the discussions and it was very interesting. I must say I'm impressed and were more motivated. I must say really the histories here that I've heard are really impressive. And I'm really happy actually that we have something like this association, that maybe we can exchange the experience, the possibilities that we have and the options, the different views and the approach in different countries as well. So I would say it's very motivating what we've heard today.
Thank you, Katarzyna. Now maybe Dr. Ewelina Wachnicka would tell us about how she enjoyed this panel discussion. Where are you tonight, Ewelina? Paris, London, New York, Brussels? I can't keep up with the pace.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. It's so nice to see you all. And I do regret I'm not able to join you. I wasn't able to join you tonight. but indeed I am in a again process of transition. I moved my home last week. I will be moving home for the in the next 3 months 4 times. So someone said to me, I'm the oldest backpacker that they met, because I basically live on a pack with cartons around me and a big backpacks around me. But I really did enjoy the panel discussion, and thank you for sharing all your experiences. Very inspiring, and at the same time I could relate to, well, I'm in a little bit different discipline. I'm a microbiologist, which overall it is quite dominated by women, but the farther we go in a hierarchy, the less women there is, and there is very much later dominated by men world. So I really enjoyed all your experience that you shared. And I think in terms of the borders, we as immigrants, it's not only the first thing, the language border that we have to overcome very often. And then, of course, the building the professional career and building your credibility, but also the border of missing the home and taking the risk of moving your suitcases from one place to another place, which takes huge amount of courage, lots of effort. But in the end of the day, the award you get, the satisfaction you get, it's just amazing. And the amount of people and people from around the world that we're meeting. Today, I had a chance to have a coffee in Paris, in the center of Paris, with Piotr Dudek, who some of you will meet tomorrow. And it's just amazing. I mean, yes, we travel around the world, we meet people, and wherever we are, you can always connect. And the network we built is just such a big, beautiful asset that I think all the effort and the price we pay, it just recompensate. And thank you all for this evening. And I do regret so much I can't be with you. Sending you lots of hugs to all of you.
Thank you, Evelina. We will definitely miss you tomorrow. One more representative who joined us from Boston, our honorary member, Dr. Engineer Andrzej Furmaniak. Hi, Andrzej, how are you? You're muted.
I am unmuted now. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to see you all ages, from very young to quite mature, which I congratulate all of us. We think, or I think, that we are all living proofs that Polish engineers is a versatile one, able to work across the world, in any country you want, in any discipline you want. I do remember vividly when the country first I was working from UK abroad was Australia. And I met a Polish engineer who used to be a head of procurement in their governmental agency. And he just said to me, you know what, Andrzej? Our education in Poland is so good that actually I had recently a kind of evidence of it, because I was in a way endorsing procurement of some sort of materials, and I asked the gentleman who signed the document, what do you think the material hardness is about? And he said, oh, why are you asking this? You as a head of procurement, you are supposed to sign the document. He said, because you know what? The devices you bought for this material probably will not work because they are too soft. I said, how on earth you know this? And he was a mechanical engineer educated in Szczecin Polytechnica, a technical university. So it is amazing that our wider education is actually helping us to work abroad. You can work at any capacity, in any place, and you'll be successful. Work hard, work hard. So yes, we are living proofs, all of us. Congratulations to all of us. And congratulations to STP for the 81 today anniversary. I should mention that we are not the only organization which is old. We recently celebrated 80th University of Technica Polonia Technica with Janusz Romański in New York. We recently celebrated 80 from Canada. So there are many of us. And we have to remember one thing, that many of this technical organization with Polish engineers originated from STP in London. That was the organization from which all these Anglo-Saxon countries created their own organizations. This is it from me. All the best to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrzej. It's been great to see you all. Thank you for participating. I'm looking forward to tomorrow's reception in the Embassy of the Republic of Poland in London, and then to Saturday's informal brunch at Sky Garden, where we will be able to enjoy stunning views of London. See you there. Thank you, and yeah, see you tomorrow.
But maybe I can say something, because Martin said that there is no chance to work for Formula One. I think that seeing all of us, that we are Formula One in engineering.
No, I also deny this, because a son of our Professor Zielinski was working for Formula One, and he was actually designing cooling systems for Formula One. And he had the one presentation on our Thursday for You meetings.
Yeah.
So we are everywhere.
Yeah, we have Marcin Buczkowski, who is a big name in Formula One CFD. We even I think he was present at one of the Czwartek for You presentations 10 years ago or something like that. So yeah, our name is there.
Super.
But Agnieszka, remember we discussed in Edinburgh, you said that you are a Young Engineer of the Year in Dubai. Maybe you can say something.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that, to be honest. I said when I was in Dubai, my last months went for award where I was in a competition with, I think, 10 others engineers, and I was the first female engineer who actually won the award as a female. But the award wasn't called female engineer, it was called an engineer, which was really rewarding. And yeah, that was a great experience, definitely.
The good motivation for young Polish engineers.
Yes, you always have to go for it. I mean, if I just could advise anything to young engineers, I would say, just don't wait for opportunity. Just put yourself forward, because you're gonna reach it anyway. You're gonna work in that Formula One if you want to.